Hi everybody, we're starting Unit 2, which involves linear relationships, lines. And so today's activity, the goal is going to be to start to connect the four ways that we can see linear relationships, or these linear relationships can be shown. And so you have a notes paper that's a little open-ended, and I'm going to be expecting you to take the notes that I have and show you, which aren't going to be a lot, onto your paper. Okay, then we're going to do a group activity that connects all of these together. Okay, so the first way on your paper, you'll have this, the open paper that has linear relationships. And the first one is a table, tabular or a table. And here is the way that we could show this. A table of x and y. If x, then y. And so we have a table of data. These are points that we're going to eventually plot to graph these. Okay, and we always tend to see the table leads directly to a graph. But so we have this table right here, and this is certainly one way that we can show a linear relationship. How do we know if it's a linear relationship? One of the things that we can see is our change in y, +2, +2, okay? And then our change in x is constant as well, so that when we have a slope, and we're going to get to that very shortly on here. So if you could write this information down, you don't need to do this part, but you can write this down as a table, okay? So having a table is one way that we can show a linear relationship. The next is an equation. And our equation would be y equals mx plus b. So you did this in Algebra 1 and in middle school, that y and x are the points on the line, or what they could be. M is the slope, the constant change, and b is the y-intercept. So these are reviews that you can write down for an equation. Okay, so how do we get this equation from this? Okay, and so the first thing that you need to do, and you can write this down for your equation, is to find the slope. Okay, so we need to find the slope of that data. And I've done the math for you. The change in y is 2 over the change in x, which is 1. Look above at that table that you wrote down up above. And how do you get from 3 to 5 and then 5 to 7? Well, it's +2, positive. How did we get in the x column? It was from 0 to 1 to 2. So you can always go back to this and start to recognize what your change is. So when we have the slope is 2. The next thing we need to do is to find the y-intercept. So how do we find the y-intercept? Again, you can take this down, and I'm putting these on smaller boards because I can't write. With my shoulder injury, I can't write, so I prepared these boards for you. So the second thing we need to do is to pick a point. So one of the points on our table is 1, 5. Look above, and if x is 1, then y is 5. And what we do is substitute to find the y-intercept. We have y, m, and x, so find b. So y is 5 equals m. Our slope was 2, right? Change in y over change in x. X is 1, right there. And then we need to find b. So that's our variable. y equals mx plus b. We know everything except for the b. Solve this, and I'm not going to do all the math out for you. You should be able to solve it. That b is equal to 3. Okay, so what we then get for our equation, I'm going to write that here. Y equals 2x plus 3. That's our equation. That is ultimately our equation you need to write for the equation section. Because we found our slope, change in y over change in x, and the y-intercept. We found that. So that's our answer. That's our equation. So we now have two ways to show a linear relationship. These are the same. This table translates to that equation, and that's how we do that. Okay? So the third thing that you're going to see says words. And it's important sometimes to be able to see the vocabulary and the words that we'll use. This is one way that you could do it. You could write this down, that a number x times 2, add it to 3, will give you y. That's one way to do it. It could, one of the activities we're going to do later this week or in next week involves word problems. And you could take something and multiply it by 2, add it to 3, and you'll get something else. Like an example might be, you charge the neighbors $3 as a flat fee to walk their dog while they're on vacation. So it's going to be $3 as the flat fee. And then you're going to charge $2 every time you walk the dog. So what if you walk the dog 5 times? So it's going to be a number 5 times 2, so there's 10, plus the flat fee of 3 would give you 13. Okay, you don't have to write that down. That's just your example of what we're going to get to. That there's a word problem situation that again fits this, y equals 2x plus 3, and that x and y stand for something. We can put real life situations into that, and we will. So that's words. If you need to rewrite some of that, you can pause and go back and rewrite that sentence. Okay, so our last thing now is to graph. And sometimes that's the easiest of things. You will have little graph papers. I want you to start getting into the habit of making kind of a quick graph. I did not include a graph on there for a certain reason. I didn't want to do that. But what you can do is just make a little quick graph. Make this, and then kind of do an estimate of the points, and I'll show you how to do that next. So what we do lastly is we take these and we graph them. 0, 3, 1, 5, 2, 7. And we make a line. So what we have is our table, we have our equation, we have our graph, that's visually on an axis what it looks like, and we have the words that show that. What you can do as a quick graph is something like this: 0, 3, 2, 5, 3, 7. You can kind of estimate that line kind of like that and then make it there. So that is similar to this. So guys and girls, this is the foundation. You may need to come back to this at certain points, and now we're going to kind of do a group activity related to this. All right?